Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Community Committee. I am Councillor Sally Derham-Wilkes and I'm the chairman of the committee. Members and officers have their names in front of them. I'd like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be filmed by the council and broadcast live on the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. Do we have any apologies, please, Sarah?
Apologies received, Chairman, from Councillor Geary, Councillor Mrs Hallam, and possible apologies from Councillor Lofts.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is declarations of interest. Now, I know some members have some questions that they would like to put to Mr Jones. Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Whilst I realise there is no pecuniary interest, I do sit on the parish council and I was involved with putting some of the items with the parish. So I just wanted to clarification from the officer where I stand in respect of that. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Likewise.
Thank you both. Over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of the first round, that was an invitation for initial submissions. That was not dictating how you were going to proceed that later date. So I think it's okay for you to actually make that initial submission. I think there will be a different argument, I think, in the next round when we will, if you move forward with the recommendations in terms of any engagement at that point and predetermining at that point. But that first round was purely initial submissions for the council to consider. And so long as you are remaining open-minded at this point and not predetermining the matter, then you are okay to participate in the debate.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you both. Margaret?
Yeah, if you are minuting that, I would just like to be minuted as well that I was in the same situation as far as Herne Parish Council is concerned. Thank you.
Are there any other declarations of interest, members? Right, we will move on to the item on the agenda tonight, the Community Government's Review, the draft recommendations. At this time, I'd like to ask the Chairman of the Task and Finish Group, Councillor Leslie Dedman, to come and join us at the table, please, along with Mr Richard Jones. Thank you. Leslie, when you're comfortable, would you like to start, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman, and good evening, members. We've got a huge amount of paperwork here which reflects the very hard and fast work of the Task and Finish Group. We had quite a short time to complete this work, and I've really got to thank the officers and also the members of the Task and Finish Group, all of whom came along at various times. We did a huge amount of work. We investigated various computations. The actual initial work was done because we needed to do the consultation to see how our parish councils, of which we know we have 2 already, were doing, and to send out questionnaires for that. And also we sent out the questionnaires which incorporated the questions, do you think that there should be other parish councils? If so, what do you think? And as you'll see from the back of this paperwork, we got various replies. I mean, I'm looking at one now which everybody I'm sure has seen, which is in very spidery writing, which took a bit of deciphering, but we did figure out in the end what was wanted. So we got a lot of replies from the actual questions, and it seemed to fall into 2 computations. Initially, may I say that I think everybody who replied about Herne and Burton was satisfied, so that was one very good thing. I'm sure the chairman of Herne will be thinking that is a good thing. There was one query with Burton, which we will come to when we get down to that part of the agenda. But there was also a feeling, and I don't know whether this was because of the possibility of LGR or just a general feeling that now is the time, that it would also be beneficial for Christchurch that isn't parished to be parished. And when I use the word parish, there are various names for these councils. They can be community councils or various other names, which you'll see in your paperwork, which I'm sure you'll look at carefully. So at the moment we have Burton and Herne, and that was considered fine. We want to keep those. Everybody was pretty cohesive on that. But the remainder of the borough, as we know at the moment, is unparished. So we had recommendations, as I say, which fell into two sections, one of which was, let's make the whole of the unparished area a parish. And the other recommendation was, let's make the whole of the unparished area into 3 parishes. Now, our task at the Task and Finish group, obviously, was to make a recommendation. This is by no means the final word on it. As you know, it comes before you, Madam Chairman, and then it goes to full council. So there's many a tweak that may be done if you wish to do that. But the officers worked very, very hard on all the figures, as you can see from all the paperwork. I mean, we've got everything sorted out into how many electors there would be. And our recommendation by the end of our meetings, and in fact we had one meeting but we carried it on, so it was a very long meeting. Our recommendation is for, and you'll see it within the paperwork rather than on the front, the unparished area to be parished into 3 sections, and those sections would be Highcliffe and Walkford, which would be a large area, which I think you see. I'm not quite sure which page this is, or indeed if you're on your screens which part of the screen it is, but we've got B, C and A. So we would have Highcliffe and Walkford, we all know where that is. We would have Muddyford, Friarscliffe and Stampit as number 2 in the parished area that is as yet unparished, and then the borough that is not Highcliffe and Walkford or Muddyford, Friarscliffe and Stampit, i.e. now what would that be? Is that the west or the east? I can't remember quite. The west. The west of Christchurch would be a town council. And again, it can be called anything. It doesn't have to be called a town council. It can be called a parish council, a community council, whatever is thought of. Are you going to take questions now, or can I really carry on until... I'd rather carry on because I don't want to interrupt, because I think there's so much to get through. And I've almost finished with this initial burst of information. So that was the idea that we came up with, the recommendation. And the rationale was that from all of the paperwork that we got, all the answers to the consultations, and with all the work that we did on the Task and Finish group in terms of knowing the area, which of course we all do, which is absolutely essential, we thought that that's dividing the unparished area, if we are going to parish it, into 3 sections, not only gives the sense of the communities, because it was felt on the Task and Finish group that Highcliffe and Walkford consider themselves not really a lot to do with St Catherine's, although I'm sure St Catherine's don't feel that about Highcliffe and Walkford. So it gave a sense of community, and it also gave the numerical sense. In other words, it divides out, you'll see from the officers' reports here, it divides itself very neatly into wards. Now, this is not to say that if you had one big town council it wouldn't divide into wards. It would divide into more wards, and that would be, perfectly doable. But our recommendation, as I say, which is initially comes to you, Madam Chairman, is that we would go for keeping Herne as Herne Parish Council, unless they particularly wanted to do anything different. Keep Burton Parish Council, but Burton Parish Council expressed a wish to become Burton and Winkton Parish Council. Well, that seems a very sensible and logical thing to do. And then we would recommend parishing the borough which is not as yet parished into Highcliffe and Walkford, Muddyford, Friarscliffe and Stampit, and then what I have got down, I'm afraid, is the rest of the borough, which is a typical Highcliffe view, isn't it? But that's the rest of the borough, which would be to the west, and then would abut with Herne. So I think, Madam Chairman, that's really all I need to say at the moment. You've found all the recommendations, I'm sure. It's on page 25, and I think there's more of it on page 15. And I think now, if I pass over to Richard for anything that I've forgotten, unless you want to ask questions at the moment.
Thank you very much, Leslie. That was excellent. Thank you for explaining how the committee worked. I can certainly see they've done a thorough job. I think we'll have the presentation and complete the presentation and then go to questions as normal. Richard.
Chairman, members, I don't think there's anything else really to add significantly. The only thing I would draw your attention to is probably the criteria for assessing areas, and that is on electoral equality. Members will be familiar with that in terms of the debate about boundaries recently. So there's the electoral equality. So the area, each of the parishes or towns or the recommendations are broken into areas to achieve electoral equality, and they are detailed in each of the tables on the relevant reports. So, for instance, if I take you to page, let's get you to page 25 of your agenda, which looks at Highcliffe, and paragraph 110 in there, it lists the proposed wards: Highcliffe, North Highcliffe and Walkford and West Highcliffe. It shows the number of properties, number of electors, and these are the 5-year projected electorate forecasts for this review. Then the number of councillors allocated to each of those wards, in this case 3, 3 and 5, the electors per councillor, and then the percentage from the average. And the guidance is that those variances should be within plus or minus 10%. So on each of these recommendations, we've achieved that within that plus or minus 10%. And they're well within on most of those ones. So again, I just draw your attention to that particular criteria. The other criteria is around community identity and interest. And again, it was felt, again, not wishing to put words in the chairman of the task force group's mouth, but that it was felt that there was community interest in the 3 distinct areas that have been identified, putting aside Burton and Herne, in those 3 proposed new parish areas. It was felt there was sufficient interest in those areas. And equally, in terms of the third criteria, is the effective and convenient local government. And again, they are considered significantly large enough to actually administer that process. And again, the warding of those areas is in line with the in line with the electoral polling districts, and the existing electoral arrangements would then apply. So that again, that would be effective and convenient from that point of view.
Thank you very much for explaining that. I think the last points were the really important part of it, that there are some criteria that we have to work to, and the fact that the way the recommendation has come through with the 3 new parishes actually works very well with that. So thank you. Right, shall we start the questions then before we go into the debate? Colin? Okay, Margaret, you have a question.
Yeah, whilst I know quite a bit about parish councils, been there for a while, I notice that we've got the Highcliffe and Walkford Parish Council to be called a neighbourhood council. The name of the neighbourhood council should be Highcliffe Walkford, a neighbourhood council. The next one, sorry, I'm turning the pages here. It says for Muddyford and Stampit, it's a community council, and for Christchurch Town, it's a town council. However, presumably they will all still be parishes and have the same, statutory. They will still be parishes. So why have we got 3 different names? Really, that's my question.
Through you, Madam Chairman, the answer was that was what was suggested by the responses. if you look to the back of the papers, the respondees, for some reason, Highcliffe didn't want to be called a parish council. So what we're trying to do here is very much to go with the community wish. I mean, personally, you know, you might think, well, they're all parish councils, why not say so? But I think they felt, and certainly in the responses, which is, you know, we got responses from residents' associations as well as from other people, that the Task and Finish group has tried very, very carefully to stick to what the community was suggesting, so that none of this is led by us. We're trying to put together a scheme which will fulfil expectations. And if, when we get further down the line, it is decided to do this project, and somebody else says, I don't really think we want to be called that, then that will be the time, I think. I'm not sure how late in the day we could do that, but certainly I think it's very community-led. So it was members of the community asked for those names.
Thank you both. Any other questions? Right. Well, you seem to have done a thorough job, both in the write-up and what you have said today. So that's excellent. We need to move forward with the debate. Before we actually go into the debate, can I just remind members that we're here tonight to agree what goes out to the public as a consultation document. We're not here to say that this is exactly what will happen, as was said at the beginning. We're just giving the public a basis to work on and the information that they will need to decide how they would like us to move forward on their behalf. I'm quite sure that people will have a number of things that they might like to add to this, but I'd like to start by saying who would like to lead off with the debate, bearing in mind we don't want to pull this to pieces. Task and Finish group have done that job. We want to just formulate what goes forward now from everything that has been done in the past. So, Colin, you would like to start. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'll hold my hand up that I didn't agree with this recommendation. I think 5 parish councils is too many, and forming the rest of Christchurch into 3. I'm happy with Burton and Herne, or Burton and Winkton as it may be called in future, staying as they are. I think that's quite right. But to split the rest of the borough into small packages, I think dilutes their effectiveness. It will make it very hard to recruit parish councillors, because if you add up the figures, you're going to have to find 51 odd councillors spread across the borough. That's quite a lot of people to find. You know yourself how difficult it is to get people to come forward, especially when they won't be paid. Now, the other point is that Stampit and Mudderford residents have sent out an email saying they totally disagree with the recommendations on the basis that they don't reflect what Stampit and Mudderford submitted. Their preference was that Friars Cliff should be part of the coastal section with Highcliffe, and to quote their wording, historically Mudderford was within the old town boundaries of Christchurch and should remain so. So what they're saying is basically either one large town council for the whole of Christchurch other than Burton and Herne, or Highcliffe, Walkford and Friars Cliff as one parish and the rest of Christchurch as the 4th parish. That reduces the number of councillors that would need to be found. It also adds more power because you have 2 larger parishes to negotiate with whoever we might be negotiating with in the future. And to me, it makes sense that if if they are saying they don't support what is put here, it's doomed to failure right from the beginning. Now, maybe some people want that, maybe some people don't, I don't know. But if we are serious, and as Mr. Jones said earlier, listening to the people, then why aren't we listening to them? And we talk about criteria is community. That is the very point they are making in their submission. Also, electoral equality was mentioned. Well, that can't actually be totally achieved, because if you look at Burton and Herne, each councillor there is representing 300 and something people or 500 and something people. Across the rest of the borough, we're talking about over 1,000 people per councillor. So your equality is out of kilter already. So I think we have to put that to one side and think out of the box as to what is going to be the most effective parish and town council to help maintain what we hold dear in this borough. Now, we talked about transferring of assets and what a town or parish council could take on, and what precept or assets could be transferred to help assist pay for those taking on of those. I mean, we've got the Mayor's Parlour, for instance. You've got public toilets. We're having a new toilet block built in Saxon Square. As a tourist centre and a place where people visit, we need to ensure that all that sort of facility is maintained. And we need the finance and the strength to do that. And my personal opinion, and I stated it at the meetings, is that by splitting us into 5 parishes and a town council is too small and dilutes the effectiveness with whoever the city by the sea we may have to deal with, or with whomever. So I'm against the recommendation as it is, and I think it should be modified, and I would like to think that I would get some support here to modify it to reflect Stampit and Mudderford residents' preferences, so we get their support on board straight away, and then when we go out to public consultation we have more success of getting town councils and parish councils agreed. If we split it too much, there's going to be fractions all over the place not agreeing, and nothing will happen. And that, to me, it would be the biggest retrograde step, because we already know it's been stated by Bournemouth they don't want any town or parish councils in this new unitary authority. So we have to get this right from the beginning so that people feel that we are listening to them. And I think the recommendations as it's gone forward from here doesn't quite listen to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Colin, and thank you for explaining that you were on the committee, and the words that you've used now are your personal opinion. I did. Yes, that's an email that you've received, is it?
It was sent out to the residents and to other people. It was passed on to me. So I'm just repeating what they have said, that they do.
But it isn't something that has come to this council. It's something that they have put out.
I don't know whether it's been sent to the council yet, or whether they're waiting to.
Because they're actually in doing that now. They're sort of jumping the gun. We haven't gone out yet to the public consultation. This, I have tried to make it clear, is a document to actually go out to everybody to consult on. It isn't, this is what we're going to do. This isn't what we're here for today. We're not here today to decide how we go forward as far as parish or town councils are concerned. We're here today to try and give the public an understanding by putting out a document with the information in it, to give them that understanding of how to move forward. Thank you.
If I can come back on that, Chairman. I think the perception...
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. It's just one point here that the documents that came to the Task and Finish group, which you'll find on page 57, Samra wrote to us, whatever they're saying now. Yeah. Samra feels that 3 local councils should be created, and then goes into detail about what they are: Highcliffe and Friarscliffe, Christchurch West, which is St Catherine's Hill and Jumpers. So clearly the information is changing from what we got, and I can only say to the members that we did what we could with the information that we had. So, but no, I mean, as you say, Madam Chair, this is an ongoing task.
Yes, thank you for explaining that, Leslie. That's what I was trying to find out, that if something has come out since, possibly because of the consequences of this, we're not in the stage where we're gathering the information from people. We have got to go out to consult, and I understand you have your view, Colin, and maybe there'll be other people in the room that will feel the same as you and support what you're saying. But at the moment I'm looking to see if anybody else has any views, please. Margaret.
It's actually going back on a question, just that has come out of that. Did the Task and Finish group actually look at how it would work out if we had Highcliffe, Walkford and Friarscliffe and then the rest of the unparished area? Was that actually looked at, or was it looked at for in any combination of 2 parishes for the unparished area rather than 3? Because that isn't here. We've either got 3 or 1. That's the options, not 2.
I'm not quite sure what you mean about looking. We didn't look at all the combinations in terms of moving everybody like jigsaw pieces.
It's on page 18. There's option 1 is a single town council, or option 2 is 3 councils. Page 18.
Yes, but I
just wondered if there was an option of the option was looked at of having, forget Herne and Burton at the moment as separate, but the unparished area being in 2 rather than 1 or 3.
No, I think I can say that we probably didn't look at that option due to the speed that we needed to work at, but we had to make a recommendation, and as I say, our recommendation is simply a recommendation. As it works out, this is a workable and viable solution to the parishing of the area if we wanted to do it, but there are other solutions and other ways to do it. I'm going to just ask Richard if he's got anything to add there.
I think, Chairman and members, I think the Task and Finish group, when we had our first meeting, as you say, it was quite a rapid process. We did go through each of the consultation documents. So we did look at each of those and what they were trying to and seeking to achieve, but each of them brought different elements to the table, and therefore there is that compromise element that actually working through those, which ones perhaps fit in better. We did work on a number of models in terms of electoral equality and slicing and dicing, if you like, to try and get that electoral equality. Some of them just won't work because of the numbers game. And they are significantly out of variance. So they did look at all the representations. I think that was important to say. Yeah. But in terms of what they concluded at the end of that first meeting, they asked officers to go away and actually examine in more detail those 2 fundamental options about creating a single council or 3 councils, and then we worked on those in a bit more detail. So I think it is fair to say you did actually discuss thoroughly all of those options and the consultation documents.
Thank you both. Trish?
Thank you, Chairman. Just to say that, this isn't anything, we haven't said this is what's going to happen. The whole idea of this is to go out to consultation to find out. It's not our decision, it is our residents' decision. And we mustn't forget that. We all have our own ideas, I think, on what, well, I don't know if we do have our ideas. But anyway, this is definitely has got to be led by our residents, not by us.
Thank you, Trish, for helping to make that clear. Sue?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Firstly, could I just clarify with the Chairman that those elected for St Catherine's and Herne do consider Highcliffe very much, actually, as the and I'm sure that you yourself, as an elected representative of Highcliffe, consider St Catherine's and Herne as well. I do feel that when it goes out to consultation, the document must be as simplistic, but also as realistic as possible. There's been a lot of discussion in the media, and I'm sure that a number of our residents must be quite confused with what is actually going on. So I feel we should specify in clear language, first of all, what the possibilities will be, and then also what the responsibilities, which I'm sure my colleague here on my right is going to elaborate further. One thing I would like to say is that looking through all the document, there is no mention of any of the parishes being called Christchurch. You're using the term priory in one of the parishes, and I do feel that's rather sad. Unless I haven't read it, I mean, I only came home late last night, so. But I thought Christchurch Town somewhere was being called priory. Actually,
Page 30 is Christchurch.
Is that just a ward? Is that
Christchurch
where
Town.
that's exactly what I'm getting at. The more detail, the more confusion there's going to be. And also it is very difficult if by allocating separate wards, again, you may have difficulty in actually encouraging the electorate to come forward. Because those, particularly should there be no allowances attached to the post of being a parish or a town council, those of us who are involved in charities and organisations know how difficult it is to get people who are, who are actually willing to do something for nothing these days. So that's the whole point I'm making, is for the document to be as simplistic and also to elaborate on the responsibilities, so that those people who may suddenly feel they want to take part realise what they are going to take on. So, we don't want to create a white elephant that nobody is going to wish to support.
Thank you, Sue. Leslie, were you wanting to come back?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I think I might have, in the Hillary Clinton manner, misspoke. I think what I meant, Councillor Spittle, was that Highcliffe considers itself distant from St Catherine's, but we do consider St Catherine's and we think of them a lot. So absolutely, I don't want to in any way say that we don't, but it was the community centres that we were looking at, and that worked out, as you say, and we have got, I've lost it again. I totally agree with you that it might be a good idea, and I don't know whether we could do it before full council, to just have an even more summarising summary of what the Task and Finish group have come up with. But also, can I draw you to page 14, where we've got parish and town council functions on this document, and it does actually stress that they're a statutory consultee. I'm very much aware that all of us around this table are totally immersed in council work, and people, even on residents' associations, are not. So, for example, they don't realise that there is no stipend concerned. I think they think parish councillors do get paid, which, as Councillor Spittle says, they don't, for example. And but we have got on page 14 and page 15 what it would mean to be a parish councillor or a town councillor or a community councillor. So, and I agree that at the moment the document is quite inchoate in that it's a work in progress, and when it goes out, it will come back hopefully a bit more decided. Richard, did you want to come in on that?
Chairman, I think we do need the document as it is almost a background paper, and it's that background information. When we go out to consultation, we will be asking specific questions about where residents feel they belong, sense of belonging to their local area, whether they obviously agree with the recommendations, and we can obviously summarise those, but identifying things of community interest. at that local level. So this is, if it goes out as it is, this document will be published, whether or not with modifications, but we will clearly provide further information and a structured consultation document or form to fill out online for members of the public to provide feedback to us. And clearly we will provide paper copies before somebody says they're not all digital.
Yeah. Yes. No, I did ask that, didn't
Thank you very much for that, Richard. I certainly believe that there ought to be a bit more within this document. I think people, as has already been mentioned, there are a lot of people that think parish councillors will be paid. We sat round this table know that is incorrect. There is no payment. There would be expenses if they had to travel to meetings and things, but there's certainly no payment. And I think that needs to go within the document. And I also believe that although we have within the document the costs of the existing parishes, it's got to be made much more clear to the public the sort of things they could possibly be responsible for, as well as the statutory things that are involved within this. So they have a much fuller idea of what we're talking about, and that they do appreciate that the more things a parish council wants to take on, the more it costs to run those things. So I do believe that needs to be made a lot clearer. And I'm sure others within the room will think of things that they think ought to be made clear to all the residents, and because they're going to have to be realistic about this. We can't just think, oh yes, have them thinking, oh yes, it's a good idea. We need to have constructive ways to go forward. You want to come back, Leslie? Thank you, and then Claire.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's just to answer the question, in that when we have on page 14 and 15 the parish and town council functions, I expect that could be added to. I mean, we do have very firmly what they can deliver or support. And so I think if you're suggesting that in the consultation paper is made stronger, I'm sure we could do that. As far as the council tax is concerned, we wouldn't know what it was until it was decided. So, but
that,
yes, I take
that
your
I
point.
understand, but they have to have a realistic idea of what it might cost them. Claire?
I think Richard wanted to say something about that before.
I think the members of the Task and Finish group did debate the potential functions, and clearly you could expand that as has been mentioned. The council tax charge would go up. I think it was felt that initially that should be constrained to to services that don't require. I mean, there's a risk of staff issues, and that you then need to incur expenditure on staff and all the things that go with it. So I think it was felt that things like allotments, those sorts of issues could be tackled. We could, for instance, include in here the thoughts of the Task and Finish group, and it was fairly low level. It was allotments, maybe the cemetery, those sorts of things, maybe grants to community groups that the borough currently plays. But then, if the parish and town councils exist, then they are there to perhaps act as a safeguard should other services become at risk in the future. So I think that was one take. So I think we could certainly add something along those lines. The other issue around members' allowances, we could add into paragraph 4.2, where it talks about councillors for parish and town council are elected to office every 4 years where sufficient candidates are nominated. The next elections are scheduled for May 2019. We could perhaps add a statement there that says members of parish and town councils do not usually receive members' allowances as a statement, because I think there has been some confusion on that point.
Yes, thank you very much for that. That's the sort of thing I think needs to be included. But of course the clerk is paid, so there are expenses
Indeed, Chairman, but the role of that clerk will expand and the hours will increase and the cost will increase of that depending on the services that are provided by that parish or town council. So that's again an issue that could grow, but again initially it was felt that should be fairly constrained. But again, we do say in there that whilst we do list the current parish and town councils for Burton and Herne and their council tax levels, it is an indication in there that it is perceived that it would be around the same sort of figure for any new parish or town council taking on the services that are in the minds of the members of the task and finish group.
Thank you. Claire, you're waiting to come in, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I want to thank the officers because they did an awful lot of work and we asked them to work up a lot of schemes and they did it in a very short scale of time and they actually did it very professionally, so it made our job a lot easier, and it was very complex. We did consider all of the initial representations very carefully. We went through every one of them and it was a balancing act to come up with a proposal which we have in front of us. We couldn't unfortunately say, well, how about that, or how about that, and then go out to the public and ask their opinion. We had to come up with a recommendation, and this was the best from all of the representations we had. Looking at the representations on page 16 and 17, again, it was a bit of a balancing act because if you count them up, we had 7 representations who said that they supported additional parishes and town councils, and we had 5 who said they didn't want any change. So again, it was a relative close call, but we felt on balance that because there were, more wanting to put it out to further consultation, then we would follow through with that process. And so this is very much the start of it. And I hear what the councillor says about the fact that he would have preferred a different option, and I'm sure there'll be members of the public who will prefer a different option and let us know what that option is. And there may well be people who say that they don't actually want any more parishes within our area. I think one thing that does need to be highlighted, it will require a lot of community input into this. If we look at the numbers, in Highcliffe alone, we'll be looking for 11 parish councillors. In Herne and Burton, Herne's already got 6, Burton have got 10, and I know that they struggle to fill those posts. Well, they don't struggle, but they don't have anybody in addition to the ones they've already got, and so quite often don't have to have elections because there's not exactly a glut of people wanting to do this. Mudderford and Stampit, there would be 9, and Christchurch Town would be 15. So it's a lot of people that we'll be looking for in the community. So my belief is that any representations that come back needs to reflect that community interest, that there will be all those people out there who want to take on the responsibilities. And I feel that before the documentation goes out for consultation, perhaps it could come back to the Task and Finish group for us to just oversee some overriding principles which actually apply to all of the parishes that we're talking about. Number of councillors required to stand, the responsibilities that those councillors have to actually agree to take on, the allowances, expenses and things like that, their statutory obligations because they have to get a paid clerk, they have to have a financial officer who may be the same person, but they have to actually oversee that. And also to the residents, the cost, the precept, not that we know what the precept's going to be, but to give them a good idea of what it's going to be. And I think a lot of people feel that that precept, because it's doing stuff that the council tax covers at the moment, that will come out of their council tax, but it won't. It will be in addition to their council tax. So I think that needs to be made quite clear to them. And also then, the positive things that they can have statutory consultees on for planning and such like that, and control over certain things, those positive aspects. So really I think that overview needs to be quite bullet point and quite easy to understand when we go out to the public, and then hopefully we'll get as many representations back and then take it to the next stage as to if we've got loads of people saying we hate the way that you've done this and we think it's we want a different way of doing it, we need to look again. And very much have we got the number of people who actually want this to happen. So but congratulations to the officers and to the Task and Finish group, because I think we did a reasonable job under difficult circumstances.
Thank you, Claire. As another member of the Task and Finish group, it was good to hear your views as well. Colin?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we did in fact at the Task and Finish group get some indications of possible precepts. Now, for option 1, a single town council taking on the responsibilities of Place Mill, Red House Museum, which is going to need funding because we don't know what's going to happen after Dorset goes. Muddyford Wood Community Centre, Druitt Hall, Christmas lighting, the Old Town Hall, public conveniences, 20% administration costs, and that gave us a precept after things that would bring in money, like if we took responsibility for the market, the allotments, cemeteries, of £16.63. Now, if you split it into 3 different parishes, you take the cost of each parish, it's £47.39. So, although each parish wouldn't be paying that, when you look at it, the actual accumulative charges outweigh what a single parish would cost. Because we're saying Highcliffe and Walkford would be £15.71 as against a whole town of £16.63. Option 2, the Muddyford option, £13.66. So that's 1571, 1366, and a separate town council for the rest, 1802. So it's actually more expensive having 3 parish councils than it would be to have one big one.
I hear what you're saying, Colin. I just don't follow your logic. I'm
well,
sorry.
Each one has an administration cost.
Excuse me, Chairman, can I just come in here? The councillor's using figures that we agreed were not to go into the public domain, so if you want to close the meeting, I'm quite happy for it to carry on. But otherwise, these... I'm afraid it does. Colin, up the top, surely.
Chairman, may I just clarify this? There is we did put a financial health warning across the top of those slides when they were issued out. I think, and the red banner across the top of the slide. It does say that they were estimates. They don't include any management or other overheads on the top of those slides. Further detailed analysis would be required in order to do final calculations. So it was just indicative. They were intended as indicative figures to show the difference between a single town council and potentially 3 separate ones at service level issues. Clearly, in terms of some of those services, they are localised. So if they fell within the designated town council three council option, if they fall within a particular council area, then clearly the cost of that would fall on that particular area. But they were very indicative. They were very high level. They certainly know data analysis in detail on those figures. So I would strong health warning about putting those figures out. Hence, we were saying that it would be typically along the lines of the existing parishes that exist within Christchurch as a figure that might come out at the end of it. As I said, we would need to do an awful lot more work in order to come up with figures that would come out.
If I can come back.
Thank you very much for explaining that. I'm very sorry that we have been discussing figures that most of us around this table knew nothing about, and certainly had no idea that they were part of a confidential meeting. So can we move on to something else, Colin, if you have to come back on another subject? Otherwise I'll move on to Margaret.
I think, Madam Chairman, if I'm in error having quoted those figures, I'm sorry. They are, as was said, only indicative, but it needed to be said that, you know, right when we started this process of local government review, it was bandied about that it would cost £150 per house Band D property to form a town council. That is totally out of the window. It's nowhere near that sort of money. And I think that is why a lot of people, when we started this review, were very sceptical, and they need to know that £150 was a figure plucked out of the sky by someone to perhaps intimidate or deter people from even considering. We've had to do this review anyway because the government required it, and I think although it's difficult at this time for the officers because they've got other things to do, they have done a good job. But I agree with what has been said, that residents do need to know some sort of indicative costs. Otherwise, they're going to have that high figure in the back of their mind to deter them. And what we are saying to the residents is that to help safeguard the environment of Christchurch, we need these town and parish council set up so that there is a body that has to be consulted by whatever authority takes over, if they do, and we have a say in what happens. Purbeck are already doing it. There was an article in the paper the other day that in Corfe they're transferring all the public open spaces and car park to Corfe Parish Council, and they're looking across Purbeck to do the whole business across the area, because they can see by doing that it will safeguard or help safeguard public open spaces in the future, public toilets, their amenities, and I think we are beholding to the residents of Christchurch to try and do the same thing. We need to make it clear and easy for them.
Colin, thank you very much. I think we've all have a full understanding of your view, but I still believe that at this stage we are going out to give the public the opportunity to look at the possibility that they may want to become a parish of one sort or another, and so that they understand the consequences of becoming a parish, the advantages there will be to them, and there will be a lot of advantages, but they also understand the disadvantages. And we might all have our own personal views, but I don't believe at this stage we should be pushing what we want. We need to actually listen to the public and see what they feel. So I'm now going to move on to Margaret, please.
Okay, just a few comments. You mentioned that this is what would go out or would be put into the public domain with the consultation, I believe. I think it would be very confusing, actually, if this did. I think it needs making smaller, being more precise. For instance, like 4.3, it does say parish and town councils are statutory consultees on other matters, may deliver or support other local services. Then it goes on to all these things. But I think some people will assume that those assets might get passed over, and it's not clear that they won't. But yeah, I think that's one of the things. And I think it needs to be perhaps made clear about the statutory consultee issue. Because if you're just a residents association, you're not a statutory consultee. And I think although it says here that you are, I think it just needs that bit more, you know, it needs to be pushed home exactly what being a parish, no matter whether you're called neighbourhood, community or whatever, means, and what the responsibilities are. As far as the recommendation is concerned, I know it's just going out to consultation, but quite often people do assume, I think, that if there's a recommendation coming out, that's what's going to happen. Probably not, I don't know, but that's what is quite often assumed. Would it be possible to give out 3 options instead of 2? Or not? No, okay. So that you've got the whole of the unparished area, 2 parishes and 3 parishes, but you shook your head, so...
Chairman, the legislation requires that the council publishes its recommendations, its draft recommendations for consultation. There isn't an option to publish two options and seek the views on those two options. You are seeking views on your draft recommendations to go out to the public. If I can just cover another point, Councillor Bath made a suggestion about putting the consultation paper back, or documentation back, to the task and finish group to review before it's published. I think that would make a sensible B on the recommendations, and I'm more than happy to do that. I do take the point. We do this document that you have before you is in a way the background, how we arrived at this decision, and I think it's important the public, if they wish to drill into it, they can see that evidence. But I do take the point, it is quite convoluted in certain parts, and I think we can certainly make it more concise and focused and provide a lot of that guidance that members are expressing.
Thank you both, Sue, and then Claire.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do agree, and I don't want to seem too critical actually of this document, because I appreciate that so much information has been put in, and I can see the chairman giving me the look. But there could be quite a little bit of confusion here amongst some of the residents. For example, can I refer you to page 15 of the introduction on section 4.3 that specifies in the 5th line about community halls. Now I can imagine, bearing in mind the community hall that I'm involved with, this is totally run by a management committee, and so there would be confusion, thinking, gosh, is that, is the hall going to be taken over by the town council of Christchurch, where in fact, we do pay just a peppercorn rent to the present council at the moment. So also 4.4, it may seem, people do like to zoom in on figures and also like to find the figures that they hope will be to their advantage. And I can't see, and I apologise if I haven't read this properly, that it's not made clear the precept is in addition to the normal council tax, because particularly on the third line of 4.4, it says the average Band D council tax charge nationally for parish and town councils is £45.24. That might be misunderstood by some people, thinking, oh good, if we go into a parish, we're going to only pay £45.24, not 1,100 or whatever it is that we're paying at the moment. So this is unfortunately, it is my in my accountancy brain looking in at those figures. So I would ask that before it goes out to consultation, that the task and finish group do look at particular wording that may not apply all borough wide. Otherwise, there could be a reaction. And I want, really this should go through as smoothly as possible, which is why I suggested it being as simplistic as possible. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Sue. Claire?
Can I just say, Madam Chairman, I think we'd be happy to do the in addition element of it. I think that probably should have been in. And but as far as 4.3 goes, we were doing a very high level breakdown of what could and could not be done. So I'm not sure how we can make that any clearer, really. But certainly to say that the precept is in addition, that's very sensible. We'll do that.
Thank you, Leslie. Claire?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just briefly, thank you. That was actually what I was going to say, Richard, about putting in an additional recommendation that the final document with some overriding principles at the start that are sort of bullet pointed could come back to the task and finish group if it's approved at full council. One question I did have was arising from the comments that have been made. As councillors, should we be now allowing this to go out to the public for them to make up their own minds and actually remove ourselves from actually trying to lobby in any direction whatsoever and actually allow that to come back? Would it put us in a difficult position if we had a very strong view in one way and then started to try and tell the public that that was a view that they might like to consider as well? Would that put us in a difficult position coming back to full council to make a decision?
Community governance review should be community-led. That's by definition. I think it would place members in there is a line that you could cross, that you then jeopardise your participation later on if you are actively promoting and lobbying a particular view and a response for a particular outcome, because then you would be, I think, questioned to bias and predetermination, which could then open the whole process to challenge, and you would then end up, if you through a review, judicial review, if it fell, to have nothing at all, because it would stop that process happening at this stage. So I think there's a fine line. I think clearly members will have their own views, but it is a community-led, should be a community-led process. We will go out and we will ask the views of residents where they perceive their interest, as I said earlier, that they see their community interest. We can certainly put in more information on that, whether they would be willing to participate and actively engage in the process and perhaps stand as a future councillor on one of these councils, or council if that was their view. But I think, yes, you're right. I think it's a fine line to be tread.
Yeah. Just add to that Madam Chairman did say listen to the public, and I think that's what the Task and Finish group were very conscious of, that we haven't put any of our own views into this, we've just done a job.
Thank you, both of you, on that point. Yes, I do believe the most important thing as far as this is concerned is that we give the public the opportunity, every opportunity possible, to consider all the implications within it and respond to us, and then we listen to them. Having said that, we need to be promoting the whole thing to them. We need to make sure that our residents' associations and any groups or people that might find this of interest are well aware of it, know where to go to get the information, and are encouraged to actually complete the questionnaires that go out, so that as a council we get as much response back as possible from the community. David.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm just inquiring as to where we sit with the actual programme of. I noted 8.3. We've got a deadline of midnight, 20th of July, to receive all representations. How will our referring back to Task and Finish Group for any amendments to the information that goes out, how will that affect our programme time, Madam Chairman?
Richard?
Just bear with me, Chairman, while I find the terms of reference, because the consultation period was specified in that document. Forgive me, I should have that up on screen.
While Richard is looking that up, can I just remind members that this will go to the council, the minutes of this meeting, the draft minutes will go to the council next week. Thank you.
Could I just say, Madam Chairman, on that 8.5, the electronic version of the consultation paper, I did have a bit of a panic over that, but there will be paper versions of it in all the usual places, and I think Councillor Bath was going to put it on the Chamber of Commerce website or something, so it is going to be quite widely available as well as the electronic version. So.
Thank you, Richard.
Chairman, I have found the information. The next stage of consultation is actually an 8-week period between the 25th of May and the 20th of July. So we will gather that information for the Task and Finish Group to review in time to publish it for the 25th of May. Yeah, 25th of May. I think in terms of your comment, Chairman, certainly I would encourage members to encourage participation in the process. I certainly wouldn't discourage that. That is clearly your active role to do that. But it's the leading elements that you may wish to curtail.
Thank you. Yes, that is definitely what I meant. I don't want anybody putting themselves in a difficult position whereby they are then not able to participate in debate and maybe causing more problems for the whole of the council. So thank you. Right, we seem to have aired this pretty well, and nobody else is indicating to take part in the debate. I think everybody's had a good turn, but I think we really need to move this to a recommendation. And Claire?
I'm happy to recommend as set out with the additional recommendation B as discussed earlier.
Claire, thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Trish? Right. Thank you both. Right, we'll move to the vote then.
Say something.
Oh, yes, sorry, Margaret.
I will go with this. I just think it would have been good if we'd have had 3 options, but I'm happy to go with it because at the end of the day it's going out to the public and they can come back with whatever views. That's the whole point of it. So.
Just before you go to the vote, can we just clarify that we will pick up in the minutes the modifications to the document that have been suggested, and that it's subject to those modifications you're agreeing the recommendations for clarity, because you wish to have those included.
Yes, that's, I'm sure, what we all mean. So, we need to move to the vote. You just... right, those in favour then, please. Against?
6-1.
6-1, right. Right. Thank you all very much. Thank you, officers, and thank you, members, for all the work that's gone into this so far and everything that will go in the future. I'm sure we will be hearing back from our residents very soon, before they even have an opportunity following tonight's meeting with our questionnaire. Leslie?
Can I just say, Madam Chairman, thank you for letting us present it, but also a very big thank you to these 2 ladies behind me, at least I think they're still behind me, who did an absolutely fantastic job with the figures. I mean, we asked for a figure and suddenly there was a page of them. So it was really, really cheering to see how that can be done. So thank you very much to both of them.
Right, thank you all very much for that. Before I finally close the meeting, can I tell you all that this is my last time as chairman of this committee. I'm going to stand down at mayor making, and I'm sure you'll find that we've got a very capable chairman coming forward, if you all vote for her. Margaret's done an excellent job in supporting me as vice chairman, and I'm sure she will take care of this committee. It will be in very good hands. So thank you all for your support over the last, I don't know how many years, but I think it's a long time, and I think now's the time to actually start to back out of things gradually, and we will, I'm sure, although none of us wanted it, I'm sure that in 12 months' time we'll have a totally different council, and I wish everybody luck who's going to be moving forward with that when the time comes. So thank you everybody at this meeting tonight, all the officers and the members over the years for all the support. And I'll now close the meeting.
Before you close,
yes.
I'd just like to thank you for everything that you have done over the years. You've been chairman of this committee for a very long time. I was quite sad actually when you said you were standing down. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm sure the rest of the committee, thank you very much for all you've done.
Thank you all. I think the time's come. I think it's right for many, many reasons. So that's it. Thanks.